All right, so welcome to the Pathways for Prosperity. And I've got a great guest today, good friend Igor Kheifets, who is really a genius in email marketing. And I'd also say marketing in general. For every business, we need to know marketing because without marketing, you don't have customers. And that's the bottom line. And today, a lot of the marketing has moved to online. It's email marketing, it's ads, and the risk with that is if you don't know what you're doing, it won't be effective and it can absorb enormous sums of money and be completely ineffective. Or on the other side, if you're good at it and you do a great job, your business can go from like zero to hero level, meaning like zero to millions in no time flat. It's a really different world if you know how to leverage it. In the old days, if you had to be on network TV or radio, just it took a lot of money and a lot of time to be successful. These days, with targeted marketing that you can do online, you can identify people that are very likely to buy or be interested in your product or service. And you can, again, just scale really quickly and go from zero to millions in just months. It's really amazing. So, one of the important things is that as business people or as prospective business persons, if you're looking for a business, it's important that we know marketing. And for some people, they actually take the role of being the marketer, being a person that puts together the sales copy, puts together the Google AdWords, puts together the Facebook program, and serves other businesses. And that could be a really terrific service business. So I invited Igor on because he not only does it, he was the top paid email marketer on the earth at one point. So it's really fantastic. And he's also been a top affiliate in the top 3 of affiliates across the world, which is really incredible. Affiliate marketing is when someone promotes someone else's product or service for a bit, essentially a commission. And affiliate marketing is also great because it's super low risk. You build up a list of people that know and trust you, that have similar things they're interested in, and then you find amazing offers for them, meaning things that are really good. And Igor does that and also teaches people how to do that. So I wanted to bring Igor on to tell you about things you can do for marketing, also to tell you a little bit about his story, because I think it's always inspiring to hear from another entrepreneur who's become fabulously successful. And how did they do it? Because I can tell you that most of the entrepreneurs I know, and including Igor, we didn't start out with golden spoons. Nobody went to Eton College with the British royalty and became wealthy by just having handed to them. These are people that made it from just relatively ordinary beginnings where we could have gone anywhere. We could have been in a little run-of-the-mill job working in the post office, or we could be making millions and living lives of luxury. And the question is, how does that happen? How do you do that? And how do you do it today? So with that being said, welcome, Igor. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks, Bob. I'm happy to be here and excited, to be honest. I remember visiting you in Puerto Rico a couple months ago, so that was always fun. So I'm always happy to hang out.
Yeah. And for everybody, Igor came down with his entire family, super lovely family, spent a couple days in Puerto Rico and was checking this out. And we had a really great time. So let me ask you, in today's world with people afraid of the economy, the usual shenanigans going on with wars and things like that, which I'm not saying it's usual, but we're always having things like that. Where are the opportunities today for someone who, say, wants to start a business or as a business wants to really expand it? Where do you see the opportunities right now?
I agree with you that there's always something going on that can be used as a reason or an excuse not to get rich or a reason why someone isn't successful. And I take on a completely different mindset to that because just like Napoleon Hill wrote in Thinking You're Rich, every challenge or obstacle carries an equal seed of opportunity. And while most people walk around and they see shortage, they see inflation, they see cost of living rising, they see wars, they see economies tanking, rent prices going up, etc. I maybe it's just being wired differently. Although I do believe it's part of it is a muscle that I trained over the years, I see opportunities everywhere because just think about all the different markets and all the different niches that sprouted over the last few years alone. I was just before getting on this recording session, I was with my wife in the kitchen. We got a package in the mail, and it was a big box containing what's called, have you heard of nootropics?
I've heard of it. I don't know a lot about it.
So
What's the
nootropics are
skinny on it?
basically it's a play on supplements where these are very particular mixes of supplements. So we're talking powders, we're talking all kinds of like plants turned into powders and then or pills, etc., that you take to bring your brain chemistry to a different level so you can have more focus, so you can have more stamina mentally or physically, so you can have a better mood. If you tend to be a moody person, like I'm a very moody person, I tend to be very pessimistic, very negative in my outlook. So it's actually brain chemistry, because that's just the hormones in or the chemicals in my brain, if you will, that operate a certain way, as opposed to, say, my best friend back in Israel, his name is Stas. This is a guy, he's never down. I remember there was a day where he had a business partner wanting to break up with him. He had a massive fight with his wife, and he got sued by the city because he didn't pass some kind of regulation thing with his deli. He owns a deli, and he was like so excited. He was so positive about everything. I was like, dude, if this was me, I want to shoot myself right about now. And he's like always positive. He's wired differently. So with nootropics, you can control the way you are. Like if you're naturally lethargic in the mornings, you can have a nootropic, which is a powder you add to your water, and have some water, and then your mood is quickly becoming better. Things like that, right? It's all perfectly legal. It's all FDA approved, and it's basically the same as you go into the store and buying a magnesium pill or a vitamin
Yeah.
C pill just to increase your vitamin intake. But this is a new industry that only started maybe 10 years ago. And this is a huge opportunity because these companies make a lot of money. And if you think about it, there's been so many different industries, niches, markets that started in recent years that if you're just
Yes.
paying attention, you can make a lot of money. Another example, we started a program where we teach people how to become what we call email profit partners, where your job essentially is to manage someone else's email list. So you mentioned earlier about email lists. These are great assets. These are, in my opinion, a requirement for any business these days to increase their income, to increase customer longevity, to increase repeat purchases with customers, to maintain a healthy relationship with their customer base. Almost every major business has an email list. I mean, you just log into your inbox and you'll see emails from what? Amazon, Shane, Wayfair, any
Yes.
business, you will get emails from them with offers. Now there's a job you can have, or as a contractor, you can freelance this and get paid $1,000, $2,000, $4,000 per month for managing someone else's email list. Now that's an opportunity that didn't exist 3 years ago, 5 years ago. Now it exists, and now people are becoming very wealthy, them probably not millionaires, but they're making comfortable six figures with just less than 5 clients that they manage. Now, again, an amazing opportunity. It didn't exist before, but now it exists thanks to the internet, thanks to the way the economy shifted after COVID, where more and more businesses realized they needed an email list. All of a sudden, email volume increased, and now there's a need in someone like that. It's a skill. Basically, it's a skill that gets you paid. And as a business owner, if you want to become a business owner, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to move away from your job, from the 9 to 5, from the grind, there's really only two ways to do it, in my opinion. One being you have a skill set, some sort of skill that pays. Same as back in the day, you could have gone to school to learn how to weld or how to build something with your hands. Now you can go to, you're not even school so much as get an online course or a mentoring program, or just become an apprentice with somebody and develop a skill set of email marketing, develop a skill set of, like you mentioned, managing advertising, develop a skill set in the digital economy. I got a friend who's actually a refugee from Ukraine who escaped through Poland to England with his family. And he used to be a scientist in Ukraine, like an actual scientist. And he was a
Wow.
pretty good scientist at it too. But in Ukraine, any profession like that, scientist, teacher, etc., doesn't really pay. He quickly learned that he didn't want to be a scientist on the government payroll. And when he escaped to England, he decided to master Google Ads. The ads we see when we search for something on Google, there's some of these listings are free, meaning the website just pops up. But other listings, most of these listings actually at the very top of the page are paid listings, which means somebody's paying to be displayed to the users. So you go and you search for desserts for diabetics. The first three listings are probably ads to websites that teach you or recipes or offer you something to that for that market. And so he decided, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to figure out Google Ads. I'm going to learn how to do it. Bought a few courses, figured out Google Ads. Now he runs one of the most successful Google Ads agencies I've ever seen. In fact, a
Wow.
big part of what he does is not even on retainer as so much as a revenue share model where he gets paid for performance. And I know for a fact, without mentioning any names, that he's got a client in the relationship niche where they're driving about $1 million a month worth of advertising to their websites. And again, the guy used to be like a scientist in a university studying plastic, just maybe what, 3 years ago. It's pretty crazy how quickly he turned his life around completely and now is able to live in England, which isn't very cheap to live in, by the way.
No,
It's been getting a
expensive.
lot more expensive, yeah. And I think last month he actually bought a home too. So this is the sort of opportunities that he would have never been able to create for himself as a working in a university studying plastic.
So funny you say that, because if you're doing performance-based marketing, like where you're saying to the business, hey, I'll manage this and I only make money if you make money, is a really powerful, sort of easy to sell offer. Because I know when people offer to help us with marketing, most of them don't want to be on performance based. They just
No,
want to get paid for whatever they do, regardless of whether it helps or not. And for me as a business owner, I'm not too impressed, because I'm like, okay, you want $1 million, like your friend, $1 million budget, but no matter what happens, you want to get paid. Because I see that as a bad incentive, because the incentives for him to just spend a bunch of money, whether it works or doesn't work, doesn't really matter. And by the way, folks, I assume this is the case. If your guy is spending $1 million a month, they have to be making at least $1 million a month in sales. Otherwise, they wouldn't continue doing it. And I would guess it over 1 million. And that's an example of how you can really scale things with this email marketing and online marketing. As soon as you get, let's just say you had $1 million worth of advertising and you had $1,050,000 in sales. And if you're doing an online digital product where it really doesn't cost anything, your only question is, can I spend 2 million so I make $100,000 a month? Or can I spend 3 million and make 150,000 a month? Because these things very quickly scale up. And when you're doing it, what you do, just so you know, for business, you're going to scale it gradually. Keep adding on, you keep measuring really day by day how the sales are, and you keep spending more and more money until it stops working and hits break even. And then, even then, you may still advertise, because if you have follow on products, break even up front can be a win, because you're like, all right, I've just built a big customer base, and you measure something called lifetime value. And lifetime value means for the life that a customer is with you, for how long they're with you, how much do they spend? And you look at that over time. And if I had to spend $1 million to get $1 million in sales that would break even, and then let's say over the next 3 or 4 months, I can make an extra 100 or 200,000 with those people, I'd do it all day, right?
it
But how
reminds
does
me of that
someone?
story you told me about your infomercial days when you
Oh
were
my
at
gosh,
almost like breaking even.
I'm going to tell that story. I don't know if people find this interesting, but so back in 1999, a long time ago, I made an infomercial, and it worked, and I didn't know it. This is the most ridiculous thing. This is just proof sometimes that what you don't know just leaves millions of dollars behind you and uncapitalized on. So I make this infomercial, I put it out, and we start running it. I had $20,000 to do some media testing with it, so I put $20,000 down, and I'm expecting to make millions. This is like my mindset. I'm like, I'm going to make millions. It's going to be amazing. And I'm thinking lifestyles of the rich and famous. What actually happens is we got about $20,000 in sales. Now, I had to send out at that point a physical product, which cost me about $20. So I lost a little bit of money. By the time I was done fulfillment, I was down maybe $2,000. So then I did it again, meaning ran another series of TV infomercials, full half-hour spots, and again came up about $2,000 short. Ran it again, about $2,000 short. So then I stopped. I'm like, all right, this is not good. So I I stopped doing it. And what I found out later was that infomercial was an enormous success, because it had what's called an MER, which stands for media efficiency ratio of 1, which means if I spend $1 in advertising, I got $1 in sales. And all that you need, the whole magical formula after that, is that you need some things to sell people afterwards, meaning a live event, a membership in a coaching program, anything, just something to make up that money over time. And at the same time, this is how I found this out. So the company that helped me put it together subsequently had an infomercial with a guy named John Lane, that went to $465 million in sales. And I was so jealous. I was like, I can't believe it. How did this happen? And I found it just because I didn't know something. And one of the lessons I took from that is that you don't want to think that you're an expert in things that you really don't know about. And what you want to do is learn from people who really know what the heck they were doing. Because if I had a person on my team who really knew what they were doing, say, no, this is great. You got this media efficiency ratio of 1. This is amazing. We can make millions with this. All we need to do is put together some live seminars or some coaching, and instantly the money appears. I just didn't know that. And because I didn't know that, I gave up and just shelved the whole thing and didn't make the $465 million, which is a lot of money, by the way, especially in 1999. That was a lot of money. But it just shows me when you want to do something, you want to learn from someone who really knows what they're talking about. And I'm curious, Igor, people always, I think, ask this. So you not only do email marketing and manage lists and work as an affiliate, why do you bother to teach it? What is it that drives you to share it with other people? Why don't you just do performance-based marketing, quietly make money, and not be bothered with all that teaching?
This is a conversation I had with a friend of mine. His name is Devon Brown. He's a fellow, let's call internet marketer, even though he's doing a lot of physical event stuff as an MC, which is his true passion. Basically, we had this conversation. I don't recall when, but it was. I still lived in Israel at the time, and I think then I was bringing in somewhere between $60,000 and $80,000 a month in sales, and I was getting to keep about 80% of that. So
Wow.
I was like late mid 20s, making ridiculous amount of money. In fact, I was probably making the most money in the rundown town I lived in. I don't think there was anyone besides maybe one guy who was a real estate tycoon who was making more. And no one knew. No one had a clue because I did it all from my laptop. But I found myself, I was just like lost purpose. It wasn't exciting anymore. I wasn't excited to get up in the morning and get to work. Nothing was exciting, to be honest. By then I traveled through half of Europe, already had my first baby. So my marriage was going through this phase where the baby takes all the attention. And again, I'm still a young guy, so I don't know anything about life. And I remember picking up the phone, calling Devon, because he was a little bit more experienced than me at that point. He got on the fast track to success a few years before me. And I was looked up to him. And I said, hey, I don't get it. Like, why doesn't it feel like I can't squeeze it anymore, if you know what I mean? Like, there's no squeeze. There's no meat on the bone anymore for me. Like, it's not, money doesn't do it for me anymore, because I thought it's about the money. And he said, when you've got the house and you got, a couple of cars in the driveway, and you've attained the minimum viable financial success, it stops driving you. Like, because making an extra $10,000, $50,000, even $100,000 is no longer life changing. So you don't really feel it anymore. In fact, once you pass, I believe there were studies about this at this point. Once you pass something like 170 or 180 something $1,000 in annual income, every additional 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 doesn't really change your happiness levels. And so he told me that the way he tackled it was to go in, do something that contributes, and do something that, in a way you're giving back, in a way you are elevating someone else. And I couldn't think of anything other than teach people how to do what I do. So I could continue doing what I do, but also I could document what I do. I could formalize what I do, systematize what I do, and I was able to put it in a manual. And what I discovered is that helping another person to do what I do turned out to be one of the most rewarding things, to the same level, by the way, that being a parent for me is really rewarding, because seeing my kids develop, seeing them take on new skills and things like that. So seeing somebody raise themselves from failure to success, like this story comes to mind. A client of mine was we'll call him an MLM junkie, right? So he was jumping from one MLM to another. And as a former MLM junkie myself, I could really relate to what he was going through. Now, he lived in Venezuela at the time, or Ecuador. And he was like working a regular job, which obviously wasn't paying very much in Ecuador, but enough to pay the bills. He had a daughter. partner. And but he really dreamed of this lifestyle of not having to go to work, of being able to spend more time with his daughter, to travel the world more. And when he approached me, by then he already tried a couple of things and failed. So I taught him the way, my way. There's many ways to skin the cat, but I taught him my way. And within about 6 months or so, he was already making about $8,000 US per month. Now, you live in the Caribbean. He lived in obviously Central or South America. So that's
Extremely
a lot of money.
inexpensive place to live. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, 96,000 a year in Ecuador would be a pretty good. You'd be living pretty well.
Yeah, so he was making multiples of what people make per year over there. So he was able to travel more. He was able to give a much better life to his daughter. And what's funny is that eventually, after a couple of years of making money my way, let's call it, he actually walked away from that and he started an e-commerce business, and he became an owner of several e-commerce stores, and he sells physical items now on Amazon. The freedom of choice obviously was fueled by the cash flow that he created thanks to what I taught him. But my point being is that seeing him go through the transformation where I only showed him the way, I didn't do it for him. Like, he still was the one responsible for his success. But seeing the transformation, later meeting him in person in Orlando, and seeing him thank me and hugging it out, and just, it's an extremely rewarding experience. So I just stuck to it and continued doing it, because honestly, I don't have the passion to go sell physical items. I don't have the passion to go and now own a restaurant or something, or a laundry. Like, very few things get me like really excited, but doing what I do plus teaching what I do seems to be the combination that works for me. So I stick to it.
Those are great reasons. And by the way, I completely get that. I think Tony Robbins calls it going from success to significance, meaning you have your success,
Mhm.
like you get your finances. And I agree, once you reach a certain income level, whatever it is, for me, it's a little more than 170, but whatever, 170,000. I think the additional happiness from an additional dollar is probably minimal. And I would just say it's when, for me, it would be when whatever you want in life is available to you. I'm not talking like most people don't need a private jet, but just like when a bill comes, you just pay it without thinking about it. Your credit card, just pay the bill when it comes. If you send your kids to private school, you just pay the bill when it comes. You want to go on vacation, it's, oh yeah, great, let's schedule it. And you pick it based on when you want to go and where you want to go, not trying to save time because you go a different week or you go to a different place. You just say, oh, I'd like to go to, whether it's Ecuador or Paris or Singapore or Tokyo or Rome, whatever. You just go where you want to go. And I completely get that. So for what you do with the email marketing, what kind of person can really do that? Is there like someone has to be a scientist with that kind of mathematical background, or could they be different kinds of backgrounds? What kind of person can do it?
I hate to sound like a cliche, but anyone can do it. At this point, I've seen people from literally every walk of life, any educational level do it. And what's funny is that what I'm seeing is that the more you believe that your IQ is important for success, the less successful you are. What I like in a student is when they come with very few, let's call it, with little bad programming, if you will, because oftentimes we grow up and we're being told that successful people are in some way special, that they're made of different DNA, whatever. But having been in this business for a long time and having myself gone through my humble beginnings to where I am today, what I'm seeing is most success comes down to the audacity to take action without basically have any permission from anyone. Like, you don't necessarily need anyone to tell you that you're allowed to do it. You just decide that, okay, I'm going to be successful, I'm going to do whatever it takes. Then you just give yourself the permission to take action. And then what you need is a hungry market, meaning an environment where you can offer something and get paid for it, and either a skill or an asset. So it actually doesn't come down to your personality as much as it comes down to the skill set. Now, just a couple of examples as to the sort of people, right, that succeed with the kind of method that I use to make money. For example, I got a buddy who used to be in construction, who made a couple of bad moves, attempted to actually build a project on his own, got into massive debt. So he ended up paying off a couple $100,000 in debt just off of internet money by switching at the age of, I think, 50. He's 60 something now. So he made the switch like way after the half point in his life. So he had to reinvent himself. I got a student who is a retired chemistry teacher from the UK who just decided that he had enough free time and that the pension he was getting wasn't enough. So he went on to build himself an extra couple $1,000s in income as a means to support himself. There's a former alcoholic who was just at the end of his rope that found purpose in what we do. What we do is really not that difficult. It's more about, I believe, the mindset that people have. And again, I know I sound like a cliche, but oftentimes people just are afraid of the computer for some reason, especially if they weren't born into that generation that grew up with a computer in hand. Oftentimes they see a computer and they get nervous, even though it's the simplest thing. When you point and click, people get really overwhelmed. So it comes down to, are you willing or are you not willing to learn how to point and click on the computer and engage with a few websites, by the way? Because for me to make money online, I only need to know how to operate maybe 5 or 7 websites. It's really not a big ask if you want to be making a 6-figure income, if you ask me. To learn how to use 7 different websites. There's one website, it's called ClickBank, where you can go and you can find offers to promote in pretty much any niche market. So learning how to use ClickBank will probably take you a day or two. In my program, I teach how to use it within about 60 minutes of actual time on the computer. It's showing you everything you need to know over my shoulder. Are you willing to sit down, point and click? Are you willing to sit down and pay attention? Because sometimes I feel like it's really difficult to get people to just sit down and pay attention these days. Everyone's so spread thin with all the TikToks and all the different social media outlets that we just get back to the basics. There's a handful of websites that offer you the chance to promote products. There's a method to promoting them through email marketing, and there's a method to grow an email list. It shouldn't be as complicated as some people make it seem.
I really appreciate what you're saying, Igor, because I know with what we teach, all that I really ask people to do is follow the system. And that's part of what I was saying to people earlier. If you're going to follow someone, spend time figuring out what you want to do. If you want to do email marketing or we do overages, whatever it is, find someone who really knows what they're doing and then just follow their system. And I also have this experience that there's a disease I would call a smart guy disease or smart woman disease. And that's that smart people tend to think they know more than they know about other topics. They're not the topic they're in. You get a doctor and they're really smart about being a doctor, but then they become, say, a real estate investor or a day trader or something, and they get their heads handed to them because they don't know what they're doing. Those are investors I actually generally don't take. If someone wants to invest in one of my deals and they're a doctor or a lawyer, I probably don't want them because they then want to direct things when they have no business doing that because they don't know it. They know what they know, but that's not that other area. So I would say for anybody out there, whether you learn from Igor, whether you learn from me or whatever, follow what the person tells you, and then you earn the right to make changes later after you're successful. Then I would say you can start massaging things and changing them. Because as Igor said, there's different ways to skin cats. So there are different ways to be successful with what I do with overages, with what you do with email and online marketing. There are different ways to be successful, but what doesn't generally work is a new person mixing together 2 or 3 things. That's a disaster.
That's true. That's true. If I may, I want to chime in on some of the stuff. You mentioned that people kind of act like smart asses, right? And especially doctors, etc. And I agree. I'm Jewish, so I a big part of my community is IT guys and everything. And so you can't really share anything with those guys because they're give you 5 different reasons why this won't work, etc. So I no longer try unless they really ask, because they see the cars I'm driving or when I go to football games in Europe and stuff like that. But there's another side to this whole thing where people who come without any credentials or education, or at least high education, they tend to err on the other side of that spectrum, and they tend to say, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not fill in the blank enough, when you actually don't have to be, quote unquote, enough. The eye-opening experience for me was to go to my first internet marketing seminar in London and get to see firsthand, just to meet in person, some of the people who I knew for a fact were online millionaires, people who show off their bank accounts online, people who have all the different programs and different things, and see and just talk to them in real life and see them get hammered in the bar, talk about their failed marriages, talk about all mistakes they made. And all of a sudden, I'm realizing I'm talking to just completely normal, regular people. And then I'm thinking, wait a sec. So this person is making 10 times the money I'm making, but I'm obviously more intelligent. I'm obviously more, you know what I mean? And so there's no way. And so going to my first seminar was an eye opener. Going back home from that seminar was like, there's no freaking way I'm not going to figure this out. There's just no way. And it's actually something that I was told by quite a few of my students as well. They were like, I looked at some of your case studies and I was like, this woman from California or this guy from Kansas or whatever. And I look at them and this person is exactly like me. And the moment somebody can recognize that, the moment somebody can look at another human and be like, wow, they seem like very much like me. And if they figured it out, all of a sudden they get the belief that they can, which is something I've told you many times about your program too. I was going through your program and checking out a lot of your success stories and case studies. And you often talk about how you got a UN of case studies and success stories going
I
on
do
there
at the
because you
United
got,
Nations. Yeah,
yeah.
I do.
And it's so true because it's like, if all of these people succeeded, what excuse can you possibly have if you are a quote unquote average human being that's physically and mentally fit at the very basic level? Obviously, if somebody's mentally challenged or if somebody's got a disease of some kind that prevents them from having the energy or the intelligence to operate on a computer, I get that. But if you're like an average person, no excuse. If you're an average person, there's literally like dozens and dozens of methods for you to make money. And then the issue becomes the focus. I remember going to a seminar earlier this year in Orlando, and I got on the plane, and I usually like to sit in the front because I'm afraid of flying. And up in the front, you don't get, it's not as shaky. And I'm about to sit down, and I hear someone say, Igor. So I turn around, and on the second row, there's this guy, probably in his 50s or 60s, and he's like, you're Igor, right? I was like, yeah, a bit paranoid. So I was like, yeah.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I know you from the internet. Oh, wow, that's really cool. And so just so it happens that there was this guy who approached me in a few minutes and asked if I could switch seats with him because the way the airlines are these days, for some reason, this did happen to me a few times, they don't, for some reason, don't put the parent and the child together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so he wanted to sit next to his daughter who was scheduled to sit next to me. I said, yeah, no problem. And I ended up sitting next to this guy who called out my name. We get chatting, and turns out that he's in 5 different methods or businesses. He's going to seminars all the time. He is checking out different courses, and he seems to be succeeding a little bit with each one. But now he's finding it very difficult to keep up because he just got involved with way too many. So he's like the classic shiny object syndrome kind of
Yeah,
person. So that becomes an issue.
that is completely. And I think you can be interested once you start getting interested in life. There are so many interesting things to do. And part of the key to that is a lot of them work perfectly well or work even amazingly well, but you can't do everything. And I think that's an entrepreneurial disease. And I think when you learn how to control that and manage it, you're going to be far better off. And it's interesting. You had said someone does your thing for 6 months, often they can become really successful. Ours is the same way, that it takes several months to really get some traction and start getting things going. And often people want success, like I want 30 days to have this $1 million business. And that's just not realistic. I won the lottery. That would work then, but that's not really a business plan, I don't think.
Talk about mindset. I remember you've done the workshop, 3-day or 5-day workshop you've done recently. I think you made some really good points there, especially the fact that most people getting into any kind of business or just dreaming of becoming an entrepreneur, they really have the instant gratification approach,
Yes.
where they think they're entitled to succeed in 30 days. I don't know if I ever told you this, but it took me 3.5 years to make my first affiliate commission check of a whopping $124 and something cents. Now, I was ecstatic, don't get me wrong. I was so happy to have some actual real internet money in my hands so I could show to all of my naysayers and go buy something with it. My
Yeah.
biggest naysayer, by the way, was my dad, who kept on telling me, go get a real job. So when I got that check, I went to his place, I showed it to him, and I made him take the check with me to the bank and then go buy groceries just so he could eat the real internet
Eat
money
his
and so he
words.
knows it's real. But I think what many people miss is the fact that big, I think their success in business, in any business, but their success online is depends a lot on them as a person, as in the growth they're willing to go through and how much they're willing to step outside their comfort zone. For example, with your method, with tax averages, part of what I would assume makes people a little bit uncomfortable to step outside their comfort zone is to actually have to go and contact the people who are the owners of properties that got foreclosed. And I would imagine,
Yes,
just like many of my customers who are introverts, let's face it, the reason why somebody would want to like make money from behind the computer screen is because they probably don't want to talk to people. So if they're an introvert, that's going to be a massive thing for them, right? And most introverts are just not willing to make that little effort. Now, again, in the
sure.
program where we teach how to become an email profit partner, they don't need to go and talk to people on the phone as much, but they still need to go and send them an email, like to send out a quote unquote a cold email, reach out to them and say, hey, so and so, I know you have an email list. I'm actually on your list and I can help you manage in this way. If you're interested, let's chat. It's an email. It's safe. There's no risk in it. They're not even pitching anything. But still, I see that people get to a point where they got a list of potential email profit partners, and all of a sudden they stop. Is it fear of
Yeah,
success? Is it fear of failure? Is it just the inability or lack of discipline to step outside your comfort zone? Whatever that is, your online business oftentimes depends on you having to do that, and that seems to be an issue for many people. It's there's I guess in their life they're so comfortable that they forget that to achieve anything worthy, you often have to change your behavior. And if you behave exactly the same way you've been behaving until now, guess what? You're going to keep getting the same result you've been getting until now. So again, somehow people tend to miss that. They don't seem to connect these dots.
I think you're exactly right. That's I've had the same experience, and you do hit the nail on the head. In my program, where people fail, if they fail, is not making the calls. That's all you have to make. You have to reach out to people. As I tell people, like 5% of people would never say yes, no matter what you do, because that slice, never. God himself could come to the room with 50 angels and there could be singing and lights, and you still, they wouldn't sign up. There are 5% of people that will sign up as soon as you talk to them, like, oh, I heard a little bit about this. And I talked to someone 2 months ago, but they never called back. They probably just barked at them and they never called back. And then they're just ready to sign up. And then in the middle, there's the people that you have to build the relationship with. But I'm a little bit of an introvert. So for me, what I find is if I'm going to a party, I get stressed leading up to the party. I'm like finding excuses in my mind why I shouldn't go to this party. I'm like, I'm all of a sudden tired. I'm hungry, anything. But I'll go because I know that I need to just go. So I manage myself and I go. And then I end up like meeting a new friend, having an interesting conversation. I enjoy it when I'm actually there. And so I think a lot of you just have to manage yourself and just say, I'm going to go do it, because if you do the actions, you'll get the results. And that's one thing I've come to understand in life. If you want to do email stuff with Igor, if you do the actions, you'll get the same results that someone else that does the same actions does. The overage is if you do the actions, mainly calling people, you'll get the results. Some people a little faster, some a little slower, but it doesn't really matter. It's just you'll get the results if you do it. And I think everything's like that. If you go to the gym and you actually lift the weights or run on the treadmill or whatever you do, you'll get the benefit. It doesn't, like I had someone telling me like, you shouldn't listen to books while you're in the gym, like on the treadmill, because it won't work. I'm like, first of all, I love listening to books and I'm listening to my books. So I'm not going to the gym, period. And I'm like, that makes no sense. If my muscles have to work, it's going to have an effect. It doesn't matter what I'm thinking about it. I'm not just that, whoa. I don't know what do you think about that. I think it's hilarious.
I think a lot of people these days use social media to say controversial things just to get attention. I think it's one of those. Whether you listen to books or music while doing the right exercise, no reason why it would work. And what's funny with email, the equivalent of people not picking up the phone would be to build a list and not mail the list. In fact, I was
Oh,
chatting with a
that's a
friend from
crime.
Bulgaria the other day on my podcast, and he was telling me about the supplement business him and his partner started a couple of years back, and they were selling a lot. They were doing at least 200 units a day. Now
Wow.
imagine getting 200 buyers on your email list every single day for, let's say, 1 year. That's an
It's a lot.
incredible buyers list. That's an incredible asset. Now, then I said, wow, that's amazing. You must have made a lot of money with that list. And then he blushed. And I said, Oh, I see what happened. Let me guess, you didn't mail them. And he said, no, we didn't mail them. And this is such a common experience, no matter the list size, where people spend all this effort, energy, money to build an email list, and then they just don't mail the list. And again, same exact thing. It's a comfort zone issue. It's them being afraid of being judged. It's them being afraid of somebody unsubscribing from the list. It's whatever that is. Somehow they judge an email they're going to send to the list as an extension of them, their character, and who they are. And if somebody doesn't like that email, it's like the sky will come crashing down on them. One thing that I know for a fact that sets apart successful people is that they're really willing to make a decision, take the action, and live with the consequence. But they understand deep down that the world isn't going to end if they do something. While the people who remain unsuccessful, it's not because they lack the information, it's not because they lack the resource, it's not because they lack the mentorship. It's oftentimes they have the right mentorship and information in front of them. Go to Amazon. How many books there are on losing weight, getting the right relationship, building your business, etc. It really comes down to them simply not taking the actions. Simply not taking the actions because for some reason they've made this kind of play this movie in their head that says, oh, if I take the action, something bad will happen. Guess what? If you don't take the action, something bad will happen. The cost of living will keep rising. The government definitely ain't going to save you. Jobs will be cut. Things will happen. If you don't take the actions, life happens. And that's way scarier to me than an email that doesn't convert.
That's funny. I'm curious whether you went through any of this early in my life, like in my 20s. I did a whole bunch of self-improvement stuff. And this is anything from really studying Stephen Covey, the seven habits of highly successful people, to Tony Robbins stuff, to something called LifeSpring, which is like an est related thing. And one of the things they said that really stuck with me was funny. They said, you'll sleep when you're dead. Don't sleep all the time. Just get up and go do stuff because you'll sleep when you're dead. And I'm like, okay, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I've got a whole eternity to do that. Did you do any of that? Anything that really helped you?
I definitely did. My journey to self-improvement or like in life started when I watched The Secret, which I don't consider a self-help book, but it allowed me to believe that I could be successful. Then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that allowed me to believe that you didn't have to be born rich to be rich, but you earned your way to it. That was a big deal because my dad is a mechanic. My mom is a music teacher. So we didn't have any millionaires in the family, and no one taught me money mindset. There was no investing. I grew up in Ukraine. So everyone was just surviving. Literally everyone around us was surviving. Like you were
Wow.
doing well if you had a car. That was like that's how you knew you were doing well. You had a car, and it was like a Soviet Lada, and not
Oh,
you
not
know
one
what I
of
mean.
those things.
Like if somebody
That's
drove a
a Fiat
BMW,
128 that's crappier.
yes,
That's a
exactly,
Fiat 128 from the
exactly
60s.
the
It's just
case.
much worse.
Yes, when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I was like, whoa, there's like a way to get rich. Now I didn't have the money to go into real estate, so then I bumped into Tony Robbins's Personal Power 2 tapes. That was a game changer because I was lonely, I was fat, I was
What?
broke.
You were fat?
Yeah, I was really fat.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I attributed my loneliness to as well. That program really inspired me because there's a few exercises that Tony does there. The way you need to turn over your left shoulder and then you do it again and then you go further, visualization, introduction to NLP. He talks about marketing in that program actually as well. And so that got me on the self-development journey. I started reading Think and Grow Rich. I started reading books on influence. I started reading books on marketing. But I still had no idea how to make money. So I tried a bunch of stuff and I started with MLMs. All throughout my first 5 maybe years, I was like a big self-help junkie, and it helped a lot because your thoughts dictate your words and actions, and your actions dictate your results. So the belief system I had made me make decisions a certain way that led to certain results. And if I wanted to upgrade my results, I had to upgrade my thinking. Self development, I think, is just as important to success as having the right system or getting involved in the right market or having the right product or having the right skill set.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's exactly true. And for me, I found that certain things just really stuck with me for life. like the sleeping thing stuck with me for life. And also the possibilities that you could do more. I grew up maybe similar to you. I grew up in a nice like household. We had plenty to eat. We had a nice little place to live. But any argument in my house was always about money. My parents were always stressed about money. So I registered that. I'm like, all right, in my house, I'm going to make enough money so we never have to worry about money. So like to me, my own personal success is what I described to you in the past. I own my house. I'll have a mortgage. I just, when a bill comes, I just pay it. Like I had a plumber in fixing the toilet the other day. He gives me a bill for $465, which I thought was a lot for what he did. But I was like, oh, the toilet's fixed. It's great. And he did a really good job. And my wife's happy because he cleaned up after himself. So here's his check. I didn't care. And for me, that's like true wealth is when I just don't need to worry about it. I just like a bill comes, I pay it. We have plenty of savings. I don't need to worry. That to me was my personal success. But I think most entrepreneurs, I think, have gone through that success thing. And for you that are listening out there, I think to my experience, this is like all entrepreneurs that I know, especially the self-made ones, all went through self-help stuff. And I think sometimes the people that kill you are the people that are closest to you that have a mindset that only got them to work and get them to, like maybe it's a smaller life, not a particularly wealthy life. They can't help you get to the next level. And a lot of times they're afraid when you start trying that something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, I've had the experience of both being criticized by my loved ones as well as having to let go of some friendships because they were just not contributing to who I wanted to become. To me, succeeding with my business was more about the independence, the freedom of not having to do the things I really hated, such as taking crap from a boss or having to settle for living in a crappy place, or it's all about freedom for me. And that seems to be a quality that many entrepreneurs share. It's the freedom to call the shots that gives me personally a sense of significance and satisfaction. And what I've learned is that you can't really do that without making a certain amount of money, whatever that amount of money is for you. For me, that was roughly $250,000 a year, which allowed me to break out of every quote unquote cage that I've ever had. And then I learned taxes, and then it was just like,
yeah, I learned about that. The
I mean,
first year, generally the first year you make that kind of money, then you find out about taxes about the day before your taxes are due. You're like, oh, how much? And you're like, but wait, I don't have the cash. Yeah, I have to. That's that. I had the same experience, by the way. The first year I made a ton of money. I think it was a $550,000 tax bill. You could have knocked me over with a feather because I found out about the day before the taxes were due. And I'm like, I'll have it. I just did not have it because I'd spent it. But it's not like I went off and like a cocaine binge with Lamborghinis and prostitutes or something. All that I did literally is I paid off my mortgage. I paid off all my debt. I paid off all my student loans. I was just like on a tear to pay off all the debt. And then I just had gone through the cash. And I don't know why it didn't occur to me, but it really didn't occur to me that this whopper of a tax bill would come. And when I got the tax bill, I was like, oh no, you have to be kidding. And I ended up I did pay it after a couple months, but the first month penalty was 25% and then 5% a month after that. So I paid a lot more than I needed to pay. And I was like, oh, this is such a bad thing. So you learn that. And I would say what I tell my people who live in the US, take 30% of what you make on each deal and just put it in a savings account. That way, when the tax man comes, you can just cut the check. That's all. You don't need to do anything else but cut the check.
Show you ways to minimize it too, because that's something that I learned the third year. The first 2 years, my accountant was just like, no, you just have to pay it. I was like, what do you mean? It's like huge. Yeah, but you just have to pay it. And then all of a sudden, once you hit a certain income level, you go talk to a consultant or a different accountant or a tax attorney, and they start showing you different ways that the rich are using to legally minimize a tax bill. So it's just my mentor used to tell me, you never get a medal. There's no point where you just can sit back and be, okay, I'm done learning. Because every time you level up, there's like a different set of challenges you're dealing with, whether it's like making more money, whether it's the taxes once you've made more money, whether it's how do you now invest it so the inflation doesn't eat it, or anything else. The game just is continuous. And I think that's one of the reasons why what we do is so exciting, is because there's always something else that you could be learning. There's always something else you could be working on. It just continuously keeps you engaged. And I value that very much. I have that sort of problem solving attitude towards life, and always having the next thing to work on is like really fun for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm the same way. And I always, when I look at the world, like you were talking earlier about opportunity, I would need 100 lifetimes to capitalize on all the opportunity that's sitting out there in any given time. And I think for anybody who's looking at the world through like the glass is half empty lens, you really got to adjust that because the world is full of opportunity. It's full of losses and gains, and you just have to focus on the gains and head over that way. And then, like Igor said, just stick with it. Stick with one and don't give up on it because if you give up prematurely, then you'll always have these, like the guy you're describing on the plane. You always have a guy who's like a little bit successful in each, but not really successful, but very busy because he's spread too thin. And you just can't do that. The other thing I would say is you want to learn from people who really know what they're talking about. And that's what we're talking like Tony Robbins is probably the king of self-help, at least in our generation. I think you really have to learn from people. And anything you want to do, learn from the best. Learn their systems, learn how they do it, learn how they approach life, learn how they approach their business. I think that's just smart. And I definitely suffered from too much do-it-yourselfism. Like I would, and that's part of a smart guy disease, by the way. If you start thinking you're smart, then you start thinking you can figure everything out on your own. And you probably can figure most things out on your own given enough time, but it takes too much time because you just don't have the time to do it. Like in your business with the email, like list management and marketing, what are the key things that need to get done to make that business work? Like I know with overages, it's calling. Got to get on the phone and call people. What are the keys to your business?
There are two main things you want to. So there's the business you mentioned are two different businesses. Let's say the email management business. If you want to go and get paid a retainer every month for managing someone else's email list, then you need to know how to actually manage a list, which comes down to two things. One is writing marketing emails, which can be done according to templates that you can, these days you can use artificial intelligence to help you with that, or just follow templates from somebody who knows email marketing. And so in my program, for example, I actually give my students like 30 different templates that they can just fill in the blanks in different parts. And it's very easy to do, again, once you know what the market is. Like if your market is weight loss, then the template will go something like, if you ever wondered how, and then there's going to be a blank, right? So then you fill it. So if you ever wanted to know how to lose weight without having to go to the gym 3 times a week, or how to lose weight without having to give up chocolate, you get the point. So there's like templates. And that's, of course, just like you said, that's the benefit of working with somebody who figured things out, because if they did, they have systems and templates in place for pretty much anything that they do to save time and be more efficient, more effective. The other part of management comes down to email deliverability, which is the more technical side of things that has a certain, I would say, recipe and a checklist that you have to follow in order to get that thing working. Most of the time, of course, you're showing up with somebody who's already working well and you're just helping them do better. So that's now an amazing position to be in. You don't have to build it for them. You just have to not ruin it. That's like a different kind of challenge and much easier. Now, the other part, the other part of success of that business is just finding the email profit partners to work with, and that's actually quite easy. And similar to your overages blueprint, it will come down to the amount of attempts you're going to make, the amount of people you're going to reach out to. Again, mostly via email. And then once, let's say you reach out to 10 of them, let's say 2 respond and 1 is willing to talk to you. Now you just rinse and repeat, and you do it like, I don't know, reach out to 100, 20 respond, 10, you have 10 conversations, you close 3. So all of a sudden you got 3 clients paying you 2K per month each, you're making 6 grand a month, and your job is to use your laptop to manage their email list. Very manageable, very easily done. So the success to the email marketing side, where you're promoting other people's products with your own email list, comes down to growing your list and then mailing your list. Growing your list, you have to know how to build a landing page, which again, you can use templates for that. These days, there's software like ClickFunnels and Lead Pages and Kajabi and Go High Level. There's different pieces of software that build those pages for you. You just have to fill in the blanks on the headline and whatever other ad copy on the page. Again, if you're getting mentored by somebody who knows what they're doing, they usually show you, they give you their templates. The learning curve is nowhere near what I had to go through when I started, where it took me like a whole year to figure out how to build a landing page. The other part of it is driving traffic, driving visitors to those pages to convert them to opt-ins on the email list. Now that can be done through a various number of traffic sources, for anything from Facebook ads to Google ads to email drops is something that I teach in my program, to social media, free content posting, to joint ventures where you get other people actually share their audiences with you in exchange for a commission as well. And then the third part is to actually mail the list, which means using websites like ClickBank, for example, to find offers to promote and then write emails, or once again, use templates to send emails to your subscribers and make them offers so they can buy them and you get paid commissions. Again, conceptually, not difficult. Once you've gotten into the detail, there are certain specific steps you have to be taking. This is why it's so important for you to work with a mentor, to follow somebody who knows what they're doing, to follow someone who's like actually walking the talk, because that literally shaves years off of your learning curve. Literally.
Yeah, like you said, it took you like 5 years to even. How long did you say first check was it 3 or 5 years? I
Yeah,
think you said 5.
1 year, one full year to learn how to build a landing page. Now, of course, it's not like I was there for 1 year clicking on the computer. It was
Right.
basically 11 and a half months of procrastinating because I had no idea where to start. That's like a
Yeah.
problem. That's a problem. One of the biggest values, in my opinion, of having a system to follow. So when somebody joins your program and starts doing the overages blueprint, you have a very clear start point, and then a very clear step 2 and a step 3 and a step 4, all the way to the final step. And then you rinse and repeat the process for the next one and the next deal and the next deal. If you don't follow a system, if you don't have a system to follow, you're quite literally sitting there like that, typing in the computer, Googling stuff, going down rabbit hole number 1, rabbit hole number 2, rabbit hole number 3, and you just spend all this time doing research, essentially. Then 2 years go by, you look back and you're like, what did I do in those 2 years and how come I'm not making money yet? You get angry because you're like, oh, these gurus are not telling me the truth. But the reality is, you didn't even start. You were just trying to
Yeah.
figure out where to start. So once you are a member of a coaching program, you have a very clear idea. Oh, this is the thing, the number one thing I need to do. Number one thing is get a list of foreclosed properties over the last 12 months. So what do I need for that? Oh, I need to know exactly which websites to go to for each county. Then I need to look for the properties. Oh, how do I pick a property? What if I had a checklist of criteria that tells me what a good property is, right? So it should be worth at least this much. Should have been foreclosed at least before or after this date. It should be in this or that county because of their legal system and the way the bureaucracy works over there. Okay, so there's 3 criteria. Here's my list of counties. Let me go take a look. You do that. Okay, next step. Now I have all these properties. What do I do? Oh, I need to find contact information for the people who own them, used to own them. Okay, great. So all of a sudden you're back to school and a teacher is telling you step 1, this, step 2, this, step 3, this. And so having a checklist, all of a sudden you're progressing so fast that in just 30 days time, you're achieving things that weren't possible for you in the previous 3 years.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the other thing I find that often holds people back is I'll get a mindset where they want to know everything before they even take step 1. And I
Oh,
always
yeah.
say to people, I think it's impossible. It's impossible in my business. I don't know about your business, but you're not going to know everything and feel confident in it from beginning to end before you do anything. I just think it's impossible because your mind
No,
doesn't
I
work
don't
that
think
way.
it's possible. I really don't. In fact, I remember having a conversation with a client who ended up doing a 20K per month business online with his wife, actually, together with his wife, which is a whole other conversation because it can be challenging sometimes to go to bed with a business partner. But that's like neither here nor there. So he was telling me that the exact quote is, Igor, if you were to tell me that to make 20K per month, I had to do all this, I would have not gone for it. If you told me up front that these are all the steps, I would have never done it. And I said, okay, but are you happy that you did? Hell,
Yeah,
so in other
you're
words,
thinking you're about to get a beating, right? A verbal beating when someone starts out that way.
oh yeah, for sure. The truth is that our brains, especially today, they're easily overwhelmed. It's very easy to overwhelm somebody with steps. In fact, Tony Robbins, we keep going back to him, he mentions that whenever he's teaching somebody anything, that he doesn't do more than 7 steps, because more than 7 really overwhelms people. Now, depending on which way you're going to make money, it's more than likely that method will have more than 7 steps. So as somebody who's an educator, right, and that's a totally different skill set in my opinion. Like, there's many gurus out there, quote unquote gurus, who will go make a lot of money, but they're actually crappy educators, which obviously
Yes.
shows based on how many actual case studies they have in the program. Like, obviously someone like you with the United Nations of case studies shows that you're actually a great educator, not just a great business owner or somebody who's making money. And so to teach somebody to make money is a different skill set to actually make it. Because when I started, I just laid everything out to people. I was like, oh, here's everything that I'm doing. Here, take it and run it. And all of a sudden, I'm noticing no one's taking action, right? Like, nobody. All of a sudden, people are angry with me. It's, no, you promised me this and this. Like, yeah, here, just gave it to you. And they can't, because it's just too much. It's, imagine if you show up first grade, right? First day of the first grade, and he's like, all right, so here's what everything we're going to be doing from now and until graduation. It's
Oh,
like just
jeez.
laid out. So instead, what you do is, what I do is I feed them in daily steps. So I ask for 30 minutes per day, and you follow step 1, step 2, and I don't let them do the step 7 before they've done the step 6. Unless you've done the step 2, step 3 doesn't unlock. Unless you've done step 3, step 5, you
Ah,
can't see it. And by spoon feeding, which is again the same way they teach in schools, by spoon feeding, that's how you help people succeed. If you try to like it's like drinking from a fire hydrant sometimes, right? You just give them everything at once, they explode.
they
Just a
get
matter of
overwhelmed.
perception. Yeah.
There's actually, I'd taken a class on teaching at one point. They call that laddering when you're, or scaffolding. When you're building up slowly from the bottom, it's like building a scaffold. And that's what that's called. And you're right. You
That
could
makes a lot
easily
of sense.
overwhelm
Yeah.
people. And you could overwhelm people with anything. I could tell you how to cook dinner. I could overwhelm you if I didn't present it in a step-by-step way, because you do too many details, too many things they're not ready to hear. And really, they need someone to say, hey, step 1, let's get the meat out of the refrigerator. Just, and let's put some salt on it. They just literally do it like that. So how does your course work? So do you send them like a lesson a day? Is that how that works? And then they just do it that way?
So you log in into the members area. There's obviously support elements, live calls that we do as well, but the core of it is a members area where you go through each lesson, we track your progress. And so it's only after you go through the initial lesson, you can move on to the next one. And we also have a reward system, something we've only introduced recently, that I'm hoping will increase the people's willingness and ability to implement. And that is, as soon as you complete a lesson, we actually reward you with something called list bucks, which is an in-house currency that we created. And so then you can trade it for discounts for other training programs, for consulting sessions, for swag, for physical items, for different things. We're actually going to do more. I look to do some deals maybe with some companies and see if I can get some vacation packages, etc. Like, I really want to remember in the old game shows, somebody would make it all the way to the final stage of the show and they would accumulate points, and then they would open up a big menu of things like VCR 300 points, TV whatever, video camera this and that. So I want to do it like that, because if our phones, for instance, so in this phone there's tons of games and my kids play these games and I play these games too. These games are crazy gamified, right? You do something, there's like fireworks and you get points and you get hearts and you get smiley faces and emojis, and it's so gamified, meaning the dopamine hits are so frequent that you end up getting addicted to it. If I go to the bathroom with my phone, like, I can get stuck there for 30 minutes just because I'm like so in it.
You're always like
So
knocking on the door. You coming out of there?
I figured we're going to do the same for our students, where we're going to make the whole process of succeeding in an online business gamified and see if that works. But that's a more recent thing. Right now, the main focus is to only feed you what you need to do today in a bite-sized way. So this way you can create progress and momentum. And that's been working so much better than putting people through a 3-hour breakdown of the whole system right away. So no, do step 1. Yes, I know you don't know what the whole thing looks like yet, but do step 1. I promise you it will make sense by step 10. And so that's what we do. And it's just been so great. We're seeing people who basically go from one method to the next for years and years, some of them for 10 years, all of a sudden finding success because they finally ended up in a structure that they could follow. And this is something that I've noticed not just with my students, but also with my team members who help me facilitate all this. Sometimes it's not that they don't want to do well, it's just the structure isn't there. And some people need structure. Some people need a very concrete and specific structure to follow every day to be successful.
I think that's such a good way to handle this. I'm thinking of Duolingo, which is a language education program that's free on your phone. I use Duolingo all the time, and it's constantly giving these little words. Oh, you just won 5 gems. Oh, you just got this reward. Oh, we changed the logo because you're doing so much. And I'm on this thing. They do a streak count, so it's how many days consecutively you've done it.
Yes.
And I'm up to 483 days on Duolingo.
Wouldn't you hate to break the streak?
I do, and I'm actually thinking that it's time to move on from Duolingo. But I don't want to go because I'd lose my streak, which is I'm just opening it up to see. I'm opening my Duolingo to see how many days the streak is. It was 483 last time I remember, but I'm sure of course it's higher than that now.
It reminds me.
So my 459 day streak.
Oh my God.
Nice. And they give you, let me see what else they have. Because I think this is interesting when you're thinking about business, to look at these modern like ways to keep people interested and keep people engaged. They have leagues. I'm trying to see where there's one place where they show you all the
leagues are really powerful.
Yes. And they give these different achievements like your legendary or your challenger or wildfire. There are a whole bunch of them. I think this is really
and the leaderboards are the most powerful component for me.
Yeah, I find this is really nice. And it's sharpshooter. You got all this stuff. And it's funny how even as an adult where I know what's going on, I still fall for it anyway. I'm still like, I don't want to lose my streak. So I'll be like 11 o'clock and I'm like, I can't come to bed. I got to do my Duolingo. She's like, again, got to do Duolingo. I'm not trying to learn Spanish because I live here in Puerto Rico most of the time. So I'm trying and it's working. But I'm thinking it's time for me to move to a more conversational platform than that. But I don't want to lose my streak. But I think it's really cool for us to think about in business. I like what you're doing, starting to add that gamification into your business. I think that'll really help people to be more successful because if they have tried things in the past and have gotten overwhelmed or not followed through with it, I think you got a much better shot with the way that you're structuring it, which I think is really smart.
Yeah,
and I think for anybody in business, you want to think about that. You want to think about how do you engage your customers in such a way that they stay engaged with you? Because I know for us, over the years, I've engaged with millions of people online through different programs that I've taught and different things that we've sold. So it's millions upon millions. And if I didn't engage with that group, like doing this, for example, having an interview with an interesting, successful person with something to offer, their interest dies off. And after a couple of months, they can't even remember what your name was. And what you were saying about the email is just reminding me. I was in Philadelphia a couple of months back, and there's this amazing chocolate store. It's a Swiss chocolate store. And so I go in there and I'm like, hey, do you have a list that I could get on? And they're like, no, not really. I was like, do you have anything that can remind me when like my wife's birthday is coming up or Valentine's Day? And hey, here's your last chance to order. Here's a package. Just click here and we'll send it to you. No, we don't have anything like that. I left that store just like banging my head. I'm like, oh my, all I wanted was to buy stuff from them. But I wanted to make it so I didn't have to remember to go to the store. Or if I wasn't in Philadelphia at that time, that they could just send it. And the guy said, he's like, I don't know any, like how to do that online stuff. Like he knew how to work in his chocolate store, how to select chocolates, how to store chocolates, how to package chocolates. But the email stuff to him was completely like, just, I may as well have asked him to invent like nuclear fusion or something. It just wasn't going to do it.
Yes.
And I bet that's a lot of like customers that people can get.
No, but that's like the weird part for me is that a lot of people that I, for example, talk to, they can do some incredible stuff. They can build a house. They can put together something really complex. They can draw up this architectural design. They can do some really cool. They can play a musical instrument. They stuff that I can't do. And when they discover that I do email marketing or do online stuff, which is a very accurate, by the way, description of how most people call it, they think I'm a rocket scientist. They really do. For I don't know why, because it's not difficult. Most people I know who have succeeded in this industry are self-taught. We didn't go to. There's no school for this, by the way.
Oh,
There's
there's
no
no school for it.
university
No.
courses you can take on this. Yeah, there's you can't go to Yale for email. Like it just doesn't exist. And so we're
No.
talking to people who like lawyers and doctors and dentists, etc. They look at guys like us and they're like, "Oh, they do online stuff." Ooh. It's really
It's true.
not
They
that
do look at it
difficult.
that way. Now, when I think
Yeah.
about it, when you're
Yeah.
making an offer, so essentially to me, this is email marketing in a nutshell. You get a group of people that have some sort of similar interest or similar demographics. And then you say, all right, what would that person be interested in? Let's say I have people that are interested in health and nutrition. What are they interested in? They might be interested in going to a gym or a special in a gym. They might be interested in nutraceuticals. They might be interested in supplements. They might be interested in new exercise program. Like they might be interested in exercise clothes, exercise gadgets. Like maybe they want a new iWatch that measures more stuff. And I think what you do essentially is you find great things that they'll be interested in. And I think you want two things. One is you actually vet something out, so it is great, or a person is great. Like you don't want to send them to terrible people or useless offers. Introduce them to people that are really good, and then line up with things that are likely to be of interest to them. They're not just random things. It's not, oh, I'll offer car insurance because everybody needs car insurance. No, you want to do things that actually align with the specific interest of that group. Like for me, when I went into the chocolate shop and discovered to my dismay, they didn't have any way of automating that gifting process. I was like, I'm about a guy that gives gifts. I have enough money to shop in an expensive chocolate shop and I'm busy, so I want my life made easier. They have lots of people like that because this is an expensive place. And all they do is make the offer. And I think that's why your business works and will always work all over the world, because a lot of shop owners, that's all they can handle. They can make the chocolates or they can make the donuts, they can make the sandwiches, but they're not marketers. Why should they be, right? Why should you be? In chocolate school, they don't teach you how to market. They teach you how to make great chocolate. Which,
That's right.
Do people ever do that, by the way? Do they ever just work for local businesses? Is that part of what people could do, or is that not really the thing?
It's definitely a direction. It's a niche market. What I find is most local businesses are not only too overwhelmed to do email, they also don't believe for some reason in how effective it is, because they're so used to doing just face to face. They don't realize that email is a way to bring people into the store. So it's less common for my students to get offline businesses to work with them. It's more common for them to work with businesses who are already building an email list, because just like with any market, it is much easier to market or sell to an existing crowd who's already taken interest in something than it is to try and convince someone new to get involved. If I was selling Cadillacs, I would actually be looking for a group of people who are already buying Cadillacs or buying high-end cars or buying at least American cars, because that will be a much easier kill, if you will, than trying to go after people who are buying European cars or people who don't even have a car. And so I'm trying to get them to buy their first Cadillac like that. So it's more about, when I teach my students, I try to teach the path of least resistance. So I'll teach them how to go and find people with lists or businesses with lists who are already doing email marketing, and just introduce themselves and get involved with somebody who already knows and understands what's going on. Again,
I
much
think
less
that
resistance
makes a lot
there.
of sense.
Like we don't.
You do. Yeah, you want to go with the flow, not try to swim up the river. If you got people that are to
Exactly.
say,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
struck me when you're telling a story. If you're selling Cadillacs, probably someone would be great if someone who's owned a Cadillac for 2, 3, 4, 5 years that may want to upgrade and say, hey, look what the new Cadillac has: new colors, new options, new features, new self-driving, new this. Don't you want to upgrade? And much easier than you take someone who always drives BMWs or Mercedes. They'd be like, no, I'm not a Cadillac guy. You got anything in Mercedes or BMW? Even though they're all luxury cars, I don't think people switch brands that much and probably just going with the flow, which again, I think this is the reason for you out there that you want to follow someone who's already tried different things, gone down dead ends, found where the easy paths are, the easy paths to success. Like, just for example, that was a really great nugget of wisdom. I hope you didn't miss it. That you want to look at businesses that are already doing online stuff. And you want to look at someone who's already predisposed to be interested in whatever you're offering rather than trying to convert someone cold. Because really, the chocolate shop guy looked at me like I had three heads, and I would not have tried to sell him email marketing services, although he desperately needs it, and it would make his life so much better and his business so much more profitable. But what's that saying? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so why bother? Just go with the people that are already predisposed to your offer. That's a really good bit of wisdom. I think selling to people aren't interested is like pushing a string up a hill. So we're running out of time. I realize I have people that I got to be on calls with. I have our claims call in a couple minutes. I have to run with that. If you were starting today, say that you were back, we'll put you to young 20-something, and you're looking at the world, would you pick to go into online email marketing, or would you pick something different? What would you do?
I would definitely go into email marketing right away and start managing other people's lists for sure. Because today it's easier than ever before. There's less barrier to entry and the market is much bigger. Because when I started doing email marketing, it was less obvious and less mainstream than it is today. Today, it's widely known to be the number one marketing method that produces the highest ROI out of all the different online media. So I would definitely go there. I would start by managing other people's email lists while in parallel building my own list as well. Because why have one income stream where you can have 2, 3, 4, 5? And the one thing that you create with having your own email list is an asset that allows you to build multiple streams of income. So I would definitely do that for sure. Now, this is only if we're talking about...
Let me just ask you a quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think my email box, along with many people, is pretty full. So one question that occurs to me is, does it still work? Or is this something that it doesn't work anymore because email boxes are too full or it's too hard to get them delivered? Is that a reason not to do it?
No, quite the opposite. The fact that it's full indicates that it works because all the different businesses are getting into it. Email is still the reliable way of delivering important information and the preferred way to get offers by people. There's been many studies done over this. You can go to a website called emailisnotdead.com. I don't know who created that website, but I'm grateful to him because he or she went on to just accumulate all the different links to all the different studies and articles about why email is not dead and why email is really strong. Also, Gmail has the promotions tab for a reason because people go and check the promotions tab. And I ran tests in my business. Getting out of the promotions tab does not increase income. Like, it increases open rates, but does not increase income. Now, what that tells you is that people actually go to the promotions tab and check offers because they love buying stuff. But aside from
I know
that,
what I do, I get rid of the stuff that I'm just not interested in anymore. Maybe I ordered something once, say as a gift, but it wasn't anything I was interested in for myself. Those ones I'll unsubscribe from those lists. I'll get rid of them. But the other stuff I'm actually excited to get. I like electronic gadgets and things. So B&H is one of my favorite suppliers of that stuff, cameras and audio and video equipment. I actually check B&H's website. They have daily specials. I check it every day. I'm like, oh, I got to see what they're doing today. And when they send me an email, I'm like, oh, I'm like anxious to open it because I'm excited about the product.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Like, you will filter whatever's not interesting to you, but whatever you like, you will always pay attention. Like, I like going to concerts. So Ticketmaster is always like getting attention in my inbox. I love getting all kinds of like memorabilia, whether it's sports memorabilia. I got stuff here on the wall, whether it's a guitar signed by somebody, etc. So I'm on email lists that announce that, oh, we got 5 guitars signed by Angus Young of AC/DC. Do you want one? So like, I'm rushing. I'm on Nootropics email list. I'm on lists from a few different authors like Mark Manson about like self-help. So it's there. But you also have to consider one last thing I'll add is that anytime we talk about any kind of major decision, any kind of especially business decision, we're always talking about email. Let's say you immigrated from New York to Puerto Rico. When you were going back and forth with your accountant, with your tax lawyer, with your paperwork for the immigration, it probably happened over either physical mail or more likely over email and phone.
Yes.
When you buy something on Amazon, you get a receipt in your email, not in your Instagram inbox. So I'm actually going through the process of moving to Europe. So I'm going to the embassy tomorrow, Bulgarian embassy tomorrow, to legalize some documents. And guess what? I set an appointment, got confirmation over email, and like the communication happens over email. I talk to my Bulgarian
Sure.
lawyer over email, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When my accountant is going to email me for the end of year taxes, it's going to be email. So email is the place we go for important stuff and for offers. And so just so it happens, if you're in the inbox, like you get that added level of trust and credibility just because it's the place for credible, important things in our life.
I agree with you. I know from my business, email does work. And I was just curious how, if someone's out there is thinking about this and it's an email, it's not even work anymore. And I know from my perspective, if you do things like Google AdWords or Facebook advertising, it costs a lot of money, a lot of money. And when you put that money out, you have no idea whether the advertiser is going to work or not, which means it's completely at risk. Now, you hope that it does, but I've had the experience sometimes where what was working just completely stops working for some reason, probably because the algorithm has changed. And
Yep.
it just stops working, but they still take your money. They still charge your credit card, and you can spend thousands of dollars before you realize there's even a problem. Email doesn't really cost anything to send. It's just, you just send your email. It doesn't cost a penny, not even postage. So I'm a big believer in it, which is the reason we're even talking about this, because others say, oh no, you don't do that anymore. I think that like Google AdWords and Facebook is great if you have the expertise and you have the team to run it, but it's dangerous because if you don't have the deep pockets to work with, or you don't have a great team, or your team stops paying attention, you can get into trouble quickly. But email marketing, you can't. I know with my email team, what we're fighting typically is we'll fight deliverability sometimes. Like we have trouble getting things through to AOL email addresses. I don't know why. It's just an AOL thing. But they'll sometimes have to switch the sender of the email and change the server and things like that. They figure that out. But I assume you teach people all that stuff whatever they need to actually enhance deliverability.
Yeah, absolutely. AOL just happens to be a very outdated system. That's why
AOL, it's just hard
it's such
for
a
us.
troublemaker.
We get complaints from customers like, I didn't get my logon information. And we're like, oh no, it's Joe at AOL.com. And we're like, we're going to send a carrier pigeon or a physical mail or something because you literally can't get things through that people even want. It's their login information. They're like, I didn't get my answer to that question. Like, we sent it. Check your spam. Oh, there it is. And you're actually answering, like you're replying to their email, answering a question, and it still goes into spam.
That's
It's
AOL
like,
for you. That's AOL.
can we show you how to set up a Gmail account so we get working? So for you out there, first of all, Igor, I'm going to say really interesting conversation. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom and your success, the things that have made you successful. Because I know you have a pretty amazing, starting from modest background in Ukraine where success was having a car, and at least you didn't have a Trabant. I don't know if you had. Did you have any Trabants there? That is the worst car known to man. So the Trabant, for anybody who doesn't know, is made of cardboard.
No.
It's a cardboard car made in Russia, and it's just the most godforsaken excuse for a car that was ever made. And that was all you could get in Russia for a while. So they had the Fiat 128 derivative, which is like a 1960s car they used to make in communist Europe. But anyway, you became a long way, a beautiful family and a great business. So I think it's great. And I would say for you out there, if you're interested in learning more, we'll put the link to Igor and his programs, things like that, in the show notes. So you just click. If I convince the editor to do it, they'll just put it up on the screen too. They'll do that later and you'll see it. But just look in there. If this interests you, go for it. And my one thing I would say is if you go for it, just stick with it. Give it 6 months to a year and it'll work if you do it. I promise. And just follow what Igor tells you to do. If it's not for you, hopefully the conversation was interesting. If you made it this long, I'm assuming that's the case. And just keep in mind, there's always opportunity. And one of the things I like about things like Igor teaches, like online marketing, it's essentially a service business, which means that you don't need a lot of capital. Like you don't have to, hey, I'm buying a whole shipping container full of widgets from China. Once they get here, I'm going to try to sell them on Amazon. And then you've got the whole complication of shipping hoping things don't get damaged, hoping things they sent you what they were supposed to send you and that it all works. Instead, you're selling a service, which means you don't have to buy inventory. You don't have to buy warehouse space. You don't have to set up a shipper. You just are selling essentially a service and selling something that's a benefit, meaning that whoever contracts with you and lets you manage their list is going to make money from it. And it's a pretty easy offer if you're saying, I'll do this on a performance basis. You just give me an email list and I'll take 10% of sales or whatever it is that you recommend. Do you help people, by the way, with pricing and things like that, like what they should be charging for different services?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing we recommend is the first couple of clients, you just go flat fee, 2K, 3K. For most of these businesses, that's like insignificant because they're probably making over
sense.
6 figures a year. So they can justify paying you that knowing you're going to bring in some sales. And it's like very little risk for them. So you can also back it up with a guarantee. You can back it up with a satisfaction guarantee. The offer is such a no-brainer for the right type of email profit partner. That's where the work will be, finding the right email profit partner, just locating them and talking to them. That's really it. The offer then almost closes
that makes
itself.
complete sense. And I would also encourage people, if you start working with Igor, work with big enough businesses that can afford to pay you, because it's, to me, the biggest way to go broke is to work with broke people. Meaning, if you're working with a business that's doing 80,000 a year gross, they can't pay you anything. They just don't have it. And unless that were a business that could explode with the right management and you had the right people in place, it would be completely useless. And I would just look for businesses where they could spend $2,000 a month, no big deal. It's $24,000 a year. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, it's just something they tried that didn't work. Because I know as the owner of a pretty substantial business, if we put 25,000 into something, it didn't work, I would say, all right, what did we learn from that? Did we learn anything? All right, it didn't work. Let's move on and go do our new thing. It wouldn't even lead to like my blood pressure raising, because I realized lots of things we tried don't work. Lots of things we tried do work. And the ones that work really do well and bring me many multiples of the things that don't work. But you only get to success by trying different things, which I also think you can scope that down to your life. You have to try things to get to a different place. You might try email marketing, learn from Igor and do email marketing or list management. You have to do something to get a different result, though. And I encourage you to look around, look at something, and when it calls to you, look into it, and don't listen to your friends who've never done anything and been successful, because they don't have the knowledge to help you. I believe in listening to people who've been successful doing what it is you want to do. Those are the ones who have a valid opinion. The rest of them, they just don't. They just don't have a valid opinion. And so you don't want to even bring it up with them. You just want to just go do your thing. I was laughing about your father who's like, go get a real job, get something probably just reliable and safe and plain. And I think it's funny that you took him shopping so he could literally eat his words. You had a good sense of humor with that. That's really good.
Yeah, it actually comes from my father, to be honest. The sense of humor.
I like it. That's really good. You can eat your words. We're going to eat on the money that I just made from my first check. That's just awesome. Because it's nice and it's funny, and he can literally eat his words. Is he proud of you today?
Yeah, he's like my biggest fan. And what's funny is that after I made my first bit of money, he flipped and became a big fan. He started supporting. I guess he saw how like determined I am. When you meet people who are really into what they're doing, their eyes are on fire, like it's contagious. So he volunteered his credit card. I didn't have one. The bank wouldn't let me one because I failed on a few payments, and so they put me on a blacklist. So he volunteered his credit card to get me a bigger email sending tool account. So I had to upgrade because my list kept growing. So he gave me his, and I paid him cash. That was a big move. But yeah, he still, by the way, he still doesn't understand what I do. Neither him nor mom.
It's okay.
When people ask them what I do, because they live in a house I bought them so they could be rent free, they say he's like on the internet. He's on the internet.
He's on the internet.
Like it's a job.
But you bought them a house. Good for you. I think that a lot of people would like to reach that level of success where you could just buy your parents a house.
To be fair, it's not like a super expensive house. It only cost $150,000 US. So it's a house. Yeah, they don't have to pay rent, so it's a big deal for them.
I think they probably spend a lot of time bragging about their son who's on the internet doing knows what, they don't know what, who bought them a house. Because there's nothing parents like to do more than brag about their kids. The thing they like to do second most is brag about their grandkids.
Oh yeah. Oh
That's
yeah. That's
but
so true.
that's so tell me about this experience. So when you bought them the house, how did you do it? It's like asking how you got engaged, but I think it's an interesting story may come out of it.
So the way it happened was this. At that point, for a couple of years now, I was making good money, and I've accumulated some money, and I paid the taxes on it. And basically, it was just sitting there, and I had no idea what to do with it. I didn't want to buy a house for myself for some reason. It's like I had trouble giving myself gifts for the longest time. I had that mentality, and I already went on a few vacations, etc. And I don't know. I hit a point where I wanted to do something big, and just so it happened, I already had visa to the US, but at the time my wife couldn't get one. Basically, we kept going to the US embassy in Tel Aviv in Israel, and they refused her a couple of times. So they kept saying, you have no ties, you have no ties. And basically,
Oh, they're worried you
like
wouldn't come
they
back, like stay in
yeah, they
America.
were saying it's like, if we'll let you get in, you're not going to leave. So we said, what is a tie? Tell us. What is considered a tie? And so they said a mortgage or this or that, like something major and massive, like real estate perhaps. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, why don't we buy real estate and put it in your name, in my wife's name, but we'll ever let our parents live there. And my parents live there. And so that's exactly what we've done. I pulled the money out of the business, paid a dividend tax for that, so an additional tax. And I was really upset about that. But I didn't want to get a mortgage. Like you, I grew up in debt. My family was always putting stuff on credit cards. Mom would go grocery shopping and break the payments into break the sum that we were paying for groceries for 3 payments. So we would eat it. It would go down the drain in the toilet. And then for 3 more months, we are still paying it off. So that was my life growing up. And I didn't want to live like that. So I was extremely debt averse. So I wanted to buy it cash, and so pulled the money out, bought it, put it in my wife's name. But my parents live there to this day, and my wife finally got the visa to the U.S. So then we could start traveling to the U.S.
Wow. And what did your parents do when you broke the news to them? Because they were renting. I'm guessing
They
they were
were
renting.
renting, yes. We were renting in Israel since the day we arrived in Israel in the June of 2000. My dad, he always had trouble expressing emotion, so he just nodded. That was like the most you could expect. My mom, she jumped and hugged me and started crying and saying thank you. So that was nice. But yeah, my dad, you could see like a certain look on his face, right? But there was
I'm
no,
sure he was happy.
no, he was happy, yeah. But anything else, if 6 months to a year passes by, it becomes the new normal. All of a sudden, they start complaining about different things. They want to get a renovation going. All of a sudden, the washing machine is bad. Can you buy us a new washing machine? So it becomes very mundane, almost like being a landlord but not getting paid for it.
That's
But
really fun.
I still put this as an achievement on my all time achievement list, as something that's major enough for me to be proud of.
I think you don't give a gift so that you get the pleasure of someone else's reaction. We all like that, but
True. Yeah.
you have to give a gift freely. Here it is, and hope you love it,
Yeah.
and not looking to get something out of it. But I'm sure that they brag, and I'm sure they're probably surprised and tickled pink, like, wow, that's the way life worked out. Our son thinks so much of us, and he loves us so much that he bought us a house because we didn't have one.
Let's
It's
hope
pretty
so. My parents, they're a bit unique in that sense. I grew up, so something that I've noticed is, as opposed to other homes, they raised me with a sense that I'm supposed to take care of them. Like I see other
okay.
households and kids grow up and that's how I raise my kids. I want to raise my kids with the idea that it's not like they don't need to make their life purpose to take care of their parents. My parents, though, were raised like that, and they raised me with a sense that the first thing I need to do is to make sure my parents are well taken care of. And that's the message I've had. So until I bought that house for them, it's set there as almost like a guilt thing, where
Wow.
every time I would go on vacation, I would think, I'm supposed to be spending this money on my parents or something. It's a weird dynamic. Once I bought it, I felt okay. I've done my part. Now I'm free to decide what I want to do. And within a couple of years after that, I ended up moving out from Israel to Canada. And so they got really upset with me about that. My
I'm
mom
sure.
is still upset with me about that because they don't get to see the grandkids as often now. And yeah, it's tough for them.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because maybe in a society where you don't have, say, any government support programs, I'm sure what they had in Ukraine when you're growing up, but I'm just imagining they didn't have a lot of welfare programs or something that would support you. Maybe your retirement was your kids.
Yeah,
That's
there was no such thing as welfare.
that would
No
explain it.
such thing. Yeah.
Because if you think about it, that's you're like making that investment and then they need to come back. Because that was the way it was a long time ago in the United States before all those programs. Like people grow up on farms and the kids would stay in the farms and the older parents would eventually retire and then the kids would support them.
Yep.
And that's not the way of the modern Western way. But it's interesting you had that whole experience where that was just your duty.
It was a duty. That's right. Again, my dad, he has a military background. So the word duty, the discipline, it was there. The camaraderie of taking care of your team, taking care of the person next to you, it was a big theme in our household. Which is ironic because while I do have a big extended family, I don't necessarily, I don't have a great relationship with any of them. Because at some point, once I became wealthy, and they knew it, all of a sudden it's like the phone's ringing off the hook. Everyone needs money. So I
That's not
felt
fun.
like, yeah, I felt like I was being used for money. So I started cutting people off. But that's like a downside of success. And that's something that I think people are unconsciously afraid of. They don't want to stand out in that way. Going back to high school reunion, if you're rich, very few people would actually drive up in a Corvette. They would probably deliberately drive up in a quote unquote normal car just not to stand out. And they would try to downplay their financial success because they don't want people to think that they've changed because of the money. My experience with money is that money kind of multiplies the kind of person you are. So if you're a person with bad character and you make money, you become even worse. If you're a person with good character and you make money, you start using your money for good. Like, for example, recently, last month, actually, I've donated a few things to my kids' school. Now, it's a private school, they already have stuff, but I still donated a ping pong table so they can do ping pong lessons. I donated several books. I donated 4 VR sets, virtual reality headsets, so they can do stuff during the winter time because winter time kids go outside less. So you gotta so the virtual reality headset allows you to do like chemistry labs and physics labs and do virtual travel to the peak of some mountain or to the beaches or something, do some fitness exercises, dance games, boxing games, etc. Webcams, security cameras, I bought a few for them as well. So I'm happy to do it because I enjoy the process, as you can probably tell, of education. And I believe we spoke about this many times, the education system does not teach the kids what's needed, right? That's why I believe you're homeschooling, right?
I am correct.
Yeah.
And my son's flourishing with that. And it's really unfortunate. The schools are too distracted with too many things. They don't just teach reading, writing, arithmetic, the fundamentals. They're busy teaching about all this other stuff and they're missing and they're sacrificing the fundamentals. And they sacrificed art and music a long time ago.
Yeah.
And my son's doing art and music. He's got it all. It's not that hard. It's a couple of basic subjects. And I don't know, that's a whole story for another day. But I think education is the key to making a better world and for someone to have a better life. And I think that's another thing that I think the internet has really given us as a gift is that you can learn virtually anything because you can connect with people like, say, Igor, who's this world-class expert. Remember, is the most highly paid email marketer on the earth, that's saying a lot. You can learn from a person at that level because of the internet, because it's easy to do these video calls. It's easy to record trainings and put them up online. It's easy to have a management system, meaning education management system, where Igor says, hey, we have a lesson. The next lesson opens up as soon as you finish the first lesson successfully. Then you get the second, then the third, and relatively inexpensively. Nothing like a university tuition, nothing like that. And very quick, too. How many hours does it take someone to get started with what you do, Igor? Like, if someone just works at it, what do you think?
The way I structured my program is 30 days, 30 minutes per day. So 30 times 30 is what, 15 hours? Now, compared to an average university,
Yes.
say 4 years in university to learn something, or 2 years. It's like nothing. So you can do it in your spare time. That's what I love about what we do, is you can learn in your spare time. Whether you're still holding to a day job, whether you're like taking care of a loved one full time, or whatever. Maybe you're still going to school for something else. Like, I got one client who's a sleep technician, so he works during the night. And now it sounds like an impressive job, sleep technician, but basically he's miserable because he's getting paid very little money. He's also from New York, and he just wants to break out. So he finds himself spending all the downtime that he's got doing this, during researching ways to make money to start a business, because he recognizes that, yeah, I'm helping people sleep better, but at the same time, who's helping me thrive? Like, it's really hard
Yeah,
to
help. Right.
giving unless you've satisfied your own basic needs.
But if you're talking about 30 hours to learn how to do something where you can make, even to start with a couple grand a month, two, three, four, five, $6,000 a month, that is a really significant start for someone's life. 2 grand a month is 24,000 a year. 4 grand is 48,000. 6 grand is what, 72,000. You're really on your way at that point. And I don't think that's that hard to do. I know, as a business owner, if I had someone competent that said, "Hey, I'll do this. I'll give me a try for 2 months. Let me try it." I'd do that in a nanosecond and let them manage the list I already have and see if they perform or not. I think it's pretty easy sale, relatively
Yep.
speaking. Um, that's a great opportunity for people. And
Yeah, I
one of
think
the
so
things I
too.
was wondering was how much of an opportunity it was. And now I think about it, I buy a lot of stuff from email offers. It's just, there are things that I actually want that fit my needs. Like, I'm interested in nutrition and diet and health. That's high interest. I'm interested in education, especially like my sons, like children. So when offers come like that, I'm all over them and grab them all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it's really something to consider. So for you out there, again, if it's something that sounds interesting to you, give it a shot. Go check out Igor's stuff. And you have a presentation. Do you have a presentation someone can watch where they can get more in depth?
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely. I'll include the link in the show notes. I just don't
okay?
remember the
So we'll put it in
URL
the
off the
show
top of my
notes.
head. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll put it in the show notes. That way you can just click on it and learn the details about it. And what I can tell you personally, I know Igor, I know his family, I know his reputation, I know his work. And this is a guy that you can really learn from. So if this appeals to you, he's the guy to learn it from. It's not, like he said, there's no Yale University that teaches that. At least nothing you'd ever want to learn, because this isn't something you learn from a university professor, because I wouldn't want to even learn from them. I want to learn from the man or woman that's doing it successfully and says, I'll show you how to do it. And that's what Igor is. He's the guy that's doing it successfully. He says, yes, I'll show you how to do it. That's the way to learn that. 30 hours just thinking about it. So in a university, I think this is the case. When you have 15 credits, I think that's 15 hours of classroom instruction. I think that's the way it works. So think about 30 hours, not that much time. That's something you could do over the next couple months very easily. And then just get started and do it. So if it's appealing to you, it has my endorsement. And again, it also fits in my favorite category of business for people starting their own businesses, which is service businesses. Because with a service business, you don't have to buy an asset. You don't have to build a restaurant. You don't have to buy a property. You don't have to go borrow money from friends and family. You don't have to borrow money from a bank. You just have to go do the work that makes the money. And the other thing I like about this kind of a business is you have a lot of leverage, meaning if you can craft one email, if you send it to one person, it may do nothing or may do a lot. But if you could send that to 10,000 people or 20 or 30,000 people or 100,000 people, these email lists can get very large. If you presented the same offer to 100,000 people, you're going to make quite a few sales, even if you're not that good at it. There's a lot of leverage. My point is there's a lot of leverage where you spend a lot of time, say a couple hours crafting like a really great email, and then you send it out, all of a sudden tens of thousands of dollars of sales can come in. And all that you did was craft that email once. And guess what? You can also reuse it again later. Give it a gap of time, but you can reuse it again later. And you'll also build off of that, which is one thing that Igor will teach you. You're going to refine the things that you do with him. Like you say, oh, my list responds to this. And then Igor's going to teach you how to refine it and take it to the next level and do things like split testing, which are technical things having to do with email, teach you how to get the emails delivered into the inboxes. Because if you don't know what you're doing, that's hard to do at scale. But if you know what you're doing, it's easy. So I think it's really interesting. And I just want to thank you, Igor, for just really sharing a lot of your life and a lot of your story and a lot of what you're doing, and the opportunity for someone else to follow in your footsteps, not have to spend a long time figuring it out, but just go do it. So thanks for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. Always happy to share.
And I look forward to connecting up again soon. You got to come back to Puerto Rico, or when you get established in Bulgaria, I'd love to go check it out. That'd be
Yeah, I'm actually I've been connecting with a lot of people from Bulgaria. It's becoming quite a hub for e-commerce, software platforms. There's a big community there. Quite a community, actually.
I'd love to check it out because it just sounds exotic and interesting. I know next to nothing about Bulgaria, but it's always interesting to go meet new people, learn new things, see the way that a culture handles itself, see the way they solve different problems. It helps you keep growing. So anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, not really. I appreciate the opportunity. As always, it's been a great conversation. You're a very
Yes.
smart guy, and it's always really cool to get your perspective on things. And to you out there listening, look, it really comes down to putting a different set of glasses, seeing opportunities where others don't see it, and making the effort and taking the action outside your comfort zone, and just knowing that whatever the consequence, you will be able to handle it. That's really what I believe the meaning of having the stomach for it truly means. So I really wish that this episode inspires you to do that. And whether you use tax overages, whether you check out what I got going on, or anything else, it'll really come down to you being willing to just give it a shot.
Those are words of wisdom. Thanks, Igor. Great seeing you. Tell the wife, said hello.